Now on Ricky Reports, an interview with Lower Merion resident Deborah Saldaña. Ricky Reports starts now. Hello, I'm Ricky Reports. On January 27, 2015, Penn resident Deborah Saldaña observed Lower Merion police stopping two African-American snow shovelers that she had hired to shovel her driveway. She claims police racially profiled the two men. The police claimed that they were stopped for violating a township ordinance on soliciting. The incident sparked a local social media firestorm. As a result of the post on social media, police launched an investigation into the incident. Hear the findings of the incident at the end of this interview. And now, here's my interview with Deborah Saldaña. So tell me what happened.
Basically, I arrived home. My father, who's a little elderly, had hired two guys, because they're not boys, to shovel the sidewalk. And we have a pretty large piece of property that includes, a whole corner, so it's more sidewalk than average. He was alone, so he's not going to do it. And the two guys started shoveling. So they were about 3/4 of the way done, towards the driveway that they were going to do. And that's when we observed that the police showed up. And we're watching through a window in the house and noticed that the police were questioning the two boys first standing, and then they had to sit, which I've now learned is standard procedure. They don't want anyone that they're running a check on to run away. So, but it didn't seem right. They sat in the snow for about 20 minutes. So, and then they were released and allowed to continue shoveling, came to the front door, got paid. But in the meantime, we had all these questions about what was going on and the kind of impression we got.
So why did you think that they were teenagers? Because the police, they're saying they weren't teenagers.
No, and they said that they're 18 and 34 years old, the two that were at my property. There were two others in a separate incident a couple of streets away that were older. They looked like you guys. I'm serious. They were a small build. They didn't have, characteristics of an older person, like facial hair or even lines, character lines. They just looked young. So myself and I've spoken to several neighbors as well, all had the impression they were teenagers. And that's usually who comes to shovel anyway. It's not usually older guys or landscapers or anything like that.
Do you think there's any chance that the police, there was no police report filed, or maybe this was another incident? Did they make this clear that these were the people?
Well, I spoke to, I think, a police, I don't know if it's a spokesperson or not the superintendent, McGrath, but they said that, they weren't cited for anything, so there's no so-called police report. There might be some kind of documentation. I think they also record it. So, and if they ran checks on them, they can verify the ages. So, I have no reason not to believe them, but honestly, to us, they didn't look like older guys. And even if they were, we didn't know that you needed a permit to shovel snow or to solicit, which includes shoveling snow.
So tell me about the conversations you had with the police there.
They were very brief. My father went outside at first through the back when he saw what was going on, just to say, hey, what's happening? I hired these guys. But he didn't even have a chance because they said, sir, we're conducting an investigation. Can you go back inside? So he came back in dutifully, and the police later, when they were done with them, came to the front door, explained that, anybody who solicits business in Lower Merion Township needs to have a permit. We didn't hear the specifics about being over 18, but that they need this permit. And then a little while later, that was it. That was the total conversation we had with the police. So I had a lot of questions in my head, but I didn't feel like interrogating the police right there. I thought I'm going to look into the township, the ordinance, the code, which a lot of people went ahead and did anyway on the Facebook post.
What did the code say?
I don't know the exact wording, but it is about solicitation. The gray area is something like shoveling included in that, I could see if it was, older guys that come around with plows and trucks but the kind of shovelers you get are always the ones that are trekking about on foot, usually young, just trying to make an extra buck. So that's why we didn't even think about it.
Now, didn't you say that in one of the comments that they were from Overbrook? Did someone say something about that?
I think there's a lot of speculation about whether or not they came from Overbrook because there's a lot of kids that come over from the city for Halloween to shovel snow. So we don't know, though. I don't think anybody really knows much about these kids. I just know that they came around last year and we recognize them. They're trustworthy. I never even thought about their age or asking them their age, but I suppose they're on foot, so they can't be too far away. I don't really know where they're from.
Did you actually speak to them?
Yes, when they came to the front door.
And did they sound like kids?
Yeah, the one had a slightly deeper voice, so you think, okay, older, voice changed. There was one that had a real baby face, real small build, lanky, and I could have sworn that kid was 15, but he was the one that was 18. So I don't know, maybe just genetically engineered to look young, but yeah.
So did they ever mention their names at all?
No, never said their names. We didn't ask their ages. Now, I'm sorry I didn't take a picture of them, but at that point I wasn't even thinking about everything that was to come. And I did, ask them how they felt. They said, a little shaken up. I said, do you think you were singled out or targeted? And they just both agreed, unanimously, like, yes. One of them said, I'm not even African American, I'm Haitian, He's probably been here a while, but that's what he said. So, and then they said, and we need this permit that we've just found out about that you have to pay $50 for at Lower Merion Township. So I was just baffled by that and thought, well, on my end, what do I have to do? Screen people to see if they have this permit, ask them their age? Is that the police's problem? Can I just, the guys that come knocking on the door, is it okay to just let them go to work? So those were the questions I had in my mind, plus what I had seen from the window, the impression I had and how they were sat in the snow. 3 police cars had pulled up, So in the picture you only see one officer and one car, but there were 3 that were blocking the whole street. Kids were out, people were shoveling, the mailman was around. I mean, it just seemed a little excessive given the situation. So I don't know if I can add to that, but to be fair, we don't know. We didn't know until now if a neighbor had called or complained or was upset about solicitors or, we didn't know any of that at the time. So, but the reports have come out that no one had called to complain. The police have said they constantly get calls from neighbors in the area who complain about any kind of solicitation. So, and they have to respond.
Okay, so let's talk about the police.
Yeah.
The police officers that pulled up, what was their race?
The first 2 were white. The third one that showed up a little later was African American.
That was at your house?
Yes, that was at my house.
Now you thought that was a little bit weird or something, right?
It seemed like too much, They weren't acting up.
Well, you mentioned something in a comment about the third officer being there to save face or something.
That's how we all took it. I think myself, my brother, my father, and the kid and the guys, I keep saying kids, thought that maybe that's why the last deliberate African American officer showed up. Was that a coincidence? We don't know. So
So talk about since then, the talk you've had with the police since then, how they've responded to this.
Yeah. So we spoke yesterday. They told me about standard procedure, how they were enforcing this ordinance that exists about the permit. although I haven't really seen that ever before. And they said that when they run a check on someone, they ask them to sit down, because it just gives them that one little advantage of, if somebody has any dirty laundry or a record or whatever, they might want to run. So that's just procedure. I said, why don't you put them in a car? Well, apparently putting them in a car is considered, being detained and cited. So you can't get out of the back of a police car. So that's why they didn't sit them down. But I just read another article about a white Caucasian male that was detained for the same thing in New Jersey, but was allowed to stand, like just hang out, not necessarily like planted in the snow.
Yeah, and you said that they weren't allowed to move.
They weren't allowed to move. This is another thing the boys said. They said, they were touching their pants, saying, I'm all wet. I asked one officer if I could just stand up for a little bit. He said no, we had to remain seated. So I understand where the police are coming from, but it just didn't seem right. So now they have to do their job, a certain way. Maybe they're used to dealing with people a certain way. I don't know. But I felt like they were singled out. Are they selectively enforcing this rule? Is it really a level playing field? Is everybody who's soliciting anything detained that way or stopped?
I find it interesting because my friends shovel snow a lot. They go around and they make money for it. None of them have ever been stopped, and they've been able to make hundreds and hundreds of dollars off of it. They've never been stopped by the police.
Maybe they don't look over 18, because that would be the other criteria that the police have. But it's hard to tell. Some people, it's just hard to tell.
Now, all 5 of the people the police have said they've questioned on Tuesday were African American. Do you think there's anything to that?
I don't know if the police that works that area, which happens to be the city limit with Overbrook, there are a lot of African American kids that cross over. There has been an uptick in burglaries in that area, but it's not necessarily African Americans that are burglarizing the homes. It's been all kinds. So I saw the first incident where they were detained, and that was just coincidental. I happened to drive past it a couple hours earlier on a nearby road, Surrey Lane. Saw the 2 individuals sitting in the snow. My first thought was, I wonder if they're looking for someone. I wonder if they did anything. Were they lurking around the house? But why are they sitting in the snow? That was the big question mark in my head. And when I saw the second group, I suppose then it just gelled in my brain. Are they profiling? Are they, I didn't see any other kind of solicitor out that day. Don't usually see, white male shovelers coming around our neighborhood, but we never had an issue before. We were never really told about this. I don't know if this was ever announced to the township. I had never heard of it. So yeah, that was what I suppose a lot of different circumstances and factors just came together in my head, and I was also thinking, this isn't a regular day when people are away at work and school, and their homes are abandoned. This is a day when it was broad daylight, everybody was out shoveling, kids were out playing, people were walking the dog, the mailman was delivering the mail, we were all home. It just didn't add up. The context was actually unusual circumstances, not your typical day that the neighborhood is abandoned by no one's home. So
do you think Lower Merion Police should handle situations like this differently?
I'm not a policeman, so I don't know. I don't know what they deal with every day. I've always had great respect for Lower Merion Police. They've always been there whenever we have any kind of problem, ourselves, our neighbors. But I do think we have to take inventory of our blind spots and biases. I know right now there's a fine line between being vigilant, being proactive, and overkill. And this just seemed like overkill on that day in that set of circumstances,
Okay, so if if it matters that their age isn't, if it is 18 to 30, does it matter on the long end of it?
I think the age is a secondary issue as well as the permit. Because I really, and this is just my gut feeling, if it was a white male, regardless of age, shoveling, they would probably assume that they live on the property, or they live in the neighborhood. And while it isn't a very ethnically diverse neighborhood, we have a few Koreans, we have a few African Americans, us, like the only Hispanics in the area. But it is predominantly white, and it used to be more homogeneous. It used to be, white, affluent, Jewish, neighborhood. So it's changing, but I can't help feeling like they were singled out,
So you think that they're racially profiled?
That's my suspicion. I don't know how the police proceed, but that was my gut feeling. And you know what? I've learned to trust my instincts and my gut over the years. For a living, I size up human interaction, behavior, body language, context. I'm an interpreter. I have to interpret English, Spanish, English, French, back and forth. I have to take in cultural nuance. I have to study people's, behavior, which adds to the meaning of what's being said. And just observing this whole scenario from the window, it just didn't sit right. It just didn't. And, add to this that my son was asking me, did they do anything wrong? Are they in trouble? And in my heart, I'm thinking, no, they didn't do anything wrong. They were almost done shoveling for us. Why would they be stopped? So, okay, I didn't know about the permit. I didn't know about the age. But regardless of that, I don't think they would have been stopped if it was, a different race. I hate to say that, but, I don't like to look at things that way. I'm not somebody who sees the world that way, but I couldn't help thinking that.
So there has been a very large response to this, both on the original post on Facebook that has over 1,000 comments and many, many likes. And then this has been covered by media. The Associated Press even picked it up as a story. Are you surprised with all the attention this story has gotten?
Absolutely overwhelmed. I didn't expect such a response, such a reaction, but I guess I hit a nerve. I realized, okay, this is a national issue. It's been in the headlines. It's been in the news. Maybe this was a more subtle example of it. Nobody ended up shot or abused. But it had a little bit of an overtone along that vein. And I was overwhelmed, though. I just didn't expect. I thought, Lower Merion Community Network was going to be it. And just a lot of debate and dialogue and conversation when the news network started reaching out, starting that night, 10, 11 at night. I had emails from NBC, from CBS, from Mainline Times, Inquirer, a friend of mine I just grew up with her and she's a reporter. Can we cover this story? But with a real urgency, like we have to have this on air tomorrow. And I'm thinking, oh God, I have a life. I have to go to work. I have to do this. I have to do that. I pretty much had to stop everything and just, make time for them. So, yeah, but I was a little wary because I don't like people to put words in my mouth. I know news stories are very sensationalist and they edit a lot of what you say.
How did you think about how the media covered it and stuff?
Well, I can tell you like 3/4 of what I said was edited. It's not bad. I'm glad that they, went to the police as well. I mean, you need two sides of the story. So I think it's been fair. But I they have to get a story on air. I thought it was a little premature because, okay, we need more facts. We need to know what the police did, why they were investigating them. Do we have a wanted criminal in the neighborhood? I don't know. So I posted my comment, and I probably was a little naive, and premature, not knowing that it was going to get that much of a reaction.
Were you surprised how quickly the township action, how quickly the township commented on it?
Yeah, I was absolutely floored. And now I'm suffering a little bit of a backlash as well. I've been
Talk about that.
well, I'm not going to say any names because I don't want a lawsuit on my hands, but I've heard a couple of radio talk shows were just tearing me apart, maybe because I didn't talk to them, I didn't give them a story, I don't know, that I was, undermining law enforcement, that I myself was some kind of narrow-minded bimbo, that I'm a Hispanic minority on the main line, so therefore I have an even bigger chip on my shoulders, that I side with the underdog, I have an issue with authority. I've never had a problem. I grew up in white privilege just like everybody else on the main line. And, maybe I have the added benefit of having this perspective of, being Hispanic. But it was never an issue for me. I've never been profiled. I've never felt targeted or discriminated in any way whatsoever. I do, however, know that, I went to Lower Merion back in the 80s, and I know that a lot of my friends were singled out. We were 2 Hispanics at LM back then, and a handful of African Americans from Ardmore. So my own brother was targeted all the time. The same address, Hispanic, pulling in and out of the driveway. He was stopped all the time. They thought he was stealing cars. He was told to go back to his own neighborhood. It was just absurd until they figured out that we lived there. But me personally, I've never, ever had any kind of problem with authority or police or profiling. But I'm not blind either, so...
So this all happened because of the power of social media. What do you think about the power of social media and what social media can do?
I was kind of aware of the power of social media, but I'm not someone who's out there. I post my stupid everyday, issues, and this happened to me, and I'm at the gym, and whatever, mediocre stuff. But and I was careful about Facebook. I'm not a reckless person. I'm not out getting drunk and putting up pictures on Facebook and stuff like that. I have to maintain a certain reputation as well for my jobs. And I know people troll through your Facebook. I know it happens. But I'm me. I'm not faking it either. So I was just blown away by how fast this spread like wildfire. I just never really thought about it until now. So
I'm guessing it's been like a long week for you with this and this is probably, it might be your last interview. I hope for your sake it is. And
one more call from Univision, which is the Spanish network. I have to call them back. But
it's been a long week. Do you have any final thoughts that you just want to just get out there?
It started a dialogue. Maybe there were issues that needed to be addressed because, obviously it's emotional, and even locally, there are people who resent Lower Merion Police. There are, across the board, there are people who have criticism. There are people who support them. There are people who think we should be doing better. Somehow, what that solution is, I'm not sure. But, we need to sit down and have another dialogue, a town hall meeting. And I guess to take it to another level, I think people should also just take inventory of their own biases and stereotypes. Everybody individually, just be aware of those things. Address them. We don't like to admit, I probably have them too. We don't like to admit we have them. But if we're aware of them, at least we can start to work on them. So that's my takeaway from all this. And I'm really happy to see that the majority of my community are, so supportive and are really invested in, our peaceful, get along with the police, kumbaya relationship with them, because that's what we want. I love our Lower Merion Police Department. I'm just not sure that they exercised the best judgment, but they're the police. They deal with things every day. I don't. So that's my takeaway from everything.
Okay, well, thank you so much for doing this interview.
No problem. Thank you very much for inviting me.
And now here is the police's findings in their investigation. As a result of the investigation, police have concluded that some of the information contained in the post was inaccurate, and that officers acted as per its policy and training. Lower Merion Police Superintendent Mike McGrath said that specifically, the poster questioned if the two stops were the result of racial profiling, if it is appropriate to have the kids, as they were referred to, sit in the snow while interrogated for long periods of time while the officers ran checks, and if anyone shoveling snow required a township permit. McGrath said that the police found 2 incidents in the Penwyn area that related to canvassing and soliciting. It is not clear whether these 2 incidents were the ones referred to in the post, as the ages of the males 40, 34 in the first case, and 34 and 18 in the second case, along with a review of the mobile video recording of the stops, shows that the individuals were clearly adults and not kids. McGrath said police next contacted the officer who made the stop by phone, who said he saw numerous people shoveling snow that day. However, he did not stop any juveniles for canvassing or soliciting or for shoveling snow. The officer said he observed 2 groups of adult males going door to door, and he stopped them for canvassing and soliciting and had investigated and documented both incidents. In the final analysis of the findings, McGrath said that they found that during the initial interview, both groups of men were allowed to stand on the sidewalk and move about freely. They were not handcuffed, nor did any officer make any physical contact with the men. When the stop on Surrey Lane was made, an active warrant was found on one of the men out of Fairfax, Virginia. As a result, the 3 men were asked to sit down. That, he said, lasted about 20 minutes of the 20-minute encounter. It was later concluded that authorities in Virginia did not want to extradite the men with the warrant. In the second incident, which supposedly happened near Deborah Saldaña's house, McGrath said that the officer had witnessed the men soliciting properties, and then after seeing a transaction taking place, he waited for them to nearly complete the shoveling when he made the stop. The 2 men were asked to sit when a possible arrest warrant was found on the 34-year-old man. They were seated for 8 minutes when it was determined that the man did not fit the description of the wanted person. The officers told the men they could stand. Having the males sit in these circumstances is an accepted method of restricting their movements while conducting further investigations, and is much less intrusive than handcuffing and placing them in the back of a police car. During the officer's investigation, it was within policy and practice to restrict the men's movements after it was learned that one subject on both stops had possible outstanding arrest warrants. In the end, McGrath said that the investigation shows police had a reasonable suspicion to make both stops. For more Harriton news, videos, features, sports, and more, go to hhsbanner.com. Reporting from inside the Harriton High School TV studio, for Harriton Banner Television, I am Ricky Reports.